Go figure. Is it Jana or Yana? I'll say hi. I recognize you from your name from, I think you're a friend of Catherine Kelly's, and that you posted one of the questions. And hi, Linda. So we've got 4 more minutes still. And if you have new questions, or if you want to just share a comment about a question that's comes up, or that a topic I'm sharing about, that would be fantastic, because I think there's more value in hearing about mark training in the context of the way I teach it. If everybody is coming from different perspectives and has experienced different specific benefits versus me just sharing about what I've learned with my dogs and working with the people I've worked with. So, okay. Hi, Diane. Okay, cool. Julie North and Brittany. Excellent. Okay. 3 minutes. It's amazing how slow time can be, and yet how fast it can appear when you have to run to your car and get your dog before an agility run. All of a sudden, like 3 minutes seems like a split second. So time is relative, I guess. Hi, Dorothy. Excellent. Well, I've been staying in touch with Monica at Clean Run, and she says the course is being well received and good enrollment. And the purpose of this Q&A is not to create more sales. It is to answer questions to help people decide if this is a course that they want to take, if it's right for them, and to clarify if they've already signed up and they have some questions, an opportunity for me to fill in any gaps, and also to talk about some of these new insights I've had that it's been a week of insights, and probably because I've been teaching a bunch of new classes. So I'm going to hold off on talking about that. Oh, hi, Nancy. Nancy Wentworth and I had our 2 Australian Terriers, and we ran in that team event in USDA many, many years ago. And we ended up getting the silver, even though we had an off course, an elimination in the final run. We were so far ahead, it was actually pretty funny. So we have this great picture of us with our 2 tiny little red dogs, and they made it happen. That was a really fun memory. Okay, 1 minute and counting. Hi, Jan. Well, I want to just share that I'm an introvert. I created a career being an artist in a studio where I put my work out there, and then the gallerist is the one that talks about it. And while I had to do artist talks and panel discussions, my natural habitat is not in front of other people. So I have to say there's some benefits to stretching outside your comfort zone, doing things that you normally don't want to do. Because since I've been doing this now since, I don't remember when I started, April? I went from pretty terrified to just kind of that feeling before you're going to do something out of your comfort zone. And so growth is possible, I guess that says. Hi, Kathy. Okay, so we are at 5 o'clock. I'm going to start because this is being recorded since it's a live event, and anybody who hasn't logged on yet can watch at the beginning. And I hope I'll have an opportunity to edit out my first 10 minutes. So, okay, so I'm going to jump right in with the first question from Karen Holby. And she's an Australian Terrier person, I think. I know a lot of people, if you have a smaller breed in popularity, you tend to know a lot of people through that breed. So she's asking if this mark trainings class offers specifics how to mark training for beginners. And I had to think about that for a while, because if you're new to mark training, everything in this course, it's all there. You'll be able to implement what you see. But if you're new to dog training, it depends on what type of learner you are. If you're the type of learner that is willing to watch a video like 3 or 4 times and then try it with your dog and to realize, it's not working so well, and then to go watch it again or to ask a question in this Ocean for Dogs group, and until you really understand it, because if you see something's just not working right, then yes, it is enough. But if you feel like you would benefit from more hands-on feedback, then perhaps this isn't the right class for you. Because I know that there's a few new dog trainers in Ocean, and this kind of takes me off to something that's important to state, that mark training is one of the techniques in Ocean. And I found mark training to be a really great way to practice and to implement these Ocean principles. And the Ocean principles are: observe your dog. That's the foundation, underlies everything. And that's the thing that all great dog trainers are doing, whether they know it or not, that observe your dog is a necessary component to any training experience that's going to be positive for your dog. The next C, connect with compassion, and that is connect with the dog in front of you instead of just connecting with your plan and going on with whatever, regardless of the dog that shows up that session. Engagement with joy is an attitude that this is fun. This with engaging with our dogs is not serious work, and if we are there present with the dog, it really is joyful, and that's what dogs express, is joy, and that's why we love our dogs, I think. Then attitude before anything is really when we focus on our dog's attitude, our attitude keeps us in the present moment and makes learning fun and makes us want to do more of it. And the never stop learning really applies to both dogs and humans. I know for a fact that I don't like to do the same thing over and over and over, even if it involves putting me out of my comfort zone. Like I just taught a bunch of new classes, and I thought, why did I do that? It's stressing me out. Well, the reason I did it is because I get kind of bored doing the same thing over and over, and the same is true for dogs. So it's just these principles are fantastic, and I've never met a person who doesn't think these are great principles. But how to apply them is another story, because when we're training, we often have a goal attached, which puts us in the future. And really, all of the Ocean principles are about bringing us back to the present. And that's where all the magic happens, in the present. So while you are gearing up towards a future goal, something you want to attain, the way you get there is by continuously checking in, observing your dog, connecting with the dog in front of you, and having a great time. So that said, mark training makes this easier to do because it slows things down. And it gives your dog somewhere to go, somewhere to be, where they can kind of take an exhale, you can take an exhale, and really think about your training mechanics, or if you're trying to develop better training mechanics, like making sure that you are saying the food is coming word before you start reaching in to your pocket to get food, all that kind of stuff. It just makes it really simple to really fine tune and to really understand what you're doing that's working and what you're doing that's not working. And I just did this in-person training session 2. I've got one more to go. There'll actually be a total of 4 with the instructors at Marin Humane, where I teach agility. And the head of behavior, Don Covell, is a supporter of ongoing education and many uses of mark training. And so they all signed up for the Clean Run Mark Training Essentials course, and part of their Marin Humane special instruction was 2 sessions with me. So the first session, we got together after they'd all watched the video, and the first session was just everybody watching these dogs and seeing how easy it is to see what's going on with all these dogs. And I was making recommendations, try this, try that, and instantaneously you'd see a shift in the dog's mental state. So you'd see kind of a timid, tentative dog all of a sudden just come out of their shell and just relax, or a dog that was distracted and a little concerned all of a sudden get grounded and connected with the handler. So that was the purpose of this first in-session training. The second one was teaching these instructors how to teach other people mark training. And this was really interesting because it was student driven. So each person, got to train another team working. And what was interesting is the whole class ended up going down the rabbit hole of training mechanics. And I'm going to talk more about some specific insights I had that were really surprising. But everybody became aware of the things they're doing that are causing little bits of confusion for their dog, or keeping their dog from progressing, being able to say, stay on a mark bucket while the handler walks by it, which is a pretty complex thing to train without helping. So for the beginning trainer, going back to that, with these advanced trainers, they benefited from having one-on-one feedback from me and from each other. So I'd say that's a pretty important component here, and again, why I developed the whole program Ocean, that it is an opportunity to get feedback over a period of time, and mark training is part of Ocean. So I hope that is okay to answer with. I'm not quite sure. You'll have to check in with yourself, but $25. We talked about what to price this class at, and this brings up another question. I might as well just go right into it. That I take a lot of online courses, and this course has the material and is presented in a manner that it is worth more than $25. And the reason it's $25 is that when I talked to Monica at Clean Run, she said, their people, they really, that's a really good price point for them, 25, 29, and we're trying to go which one should be. And she goes, during COVID, just I think 25. And so my purpose is not to get rich doing this. It's probably I'm making $0.25 an hour, like kind of artist wages doing this. But one of the problems with offering something at such a low price is there's less of a commitment. So let's say I was offering this course and it was $150. I'm not saying it's worth that, just random number. You've paid $150. When that confirmation email comes in, you're going to go ahead and register, and you're probably going to dig into that course because you paid $150. Now you still might forget about it, but you will start it. $25, it's possible it's going to get in your inbox and it's just going to go down and it's going to get buried and you might forget about it. So that is one negative to going that low. And how I feel like I countered that was by saying, hey, this is a limited time offer that you can only enroll between now and January 25th. So again, it's like, do it. And it's only going to be available through March 1st. So that means watch the videos, consume the content. Because my goal and the goal of Clean Run is not to get you to sign up for courses. The goal is that you actively participate in the courses and you get the value from the course. So it's all based on human psychology. This isn't something I invented, but by saying, hey, you have X amount of days, it's going to help people actually get through the course so that they do get the information. And another reason I would not make this a lifetime access course or anything lifetime access is that course was completed 3 months ago, and it was a very different course than the course I created 3 months prior to that. The reason it's different is I'm continuously learning different ways of talking about things on different applications, different problem solving by working with people, mostly in Ocean, and one-on-one coaching, and also in person at Marin Humane. So the course that I offer it 3 months from now is not going to be that same course. So let's say, you get into mark training and, you want some clarification about something. Instead of going back to what I was saying 3 months ago, I'd say, hey, get the information as I'm presenting it today, because I'm getting clearer and clearer. I mean, when I started this 6 years ago, there was not enough to even, make a course. It was just dogs standing on mark buckets, dogs going between two mark buckets. I hadn't really made it my own and turned it into something that is a way of implementing these underlying principles that I talked about already. So my point of view is take notes, because the stuff that resonates for you now is the stuff that should be noted so that you're thinking about it. Do the mark training with your dog. Stay in touch through the free Ocean for Dogs group and ask questions there. And I do post videos. I want to encourage people to use mark training in the most productive ways possible. And the most productive way to use mark training is a way to implement Ocean principles. So yes, you can go all external behavior on it, and I also use them to train a dog how to collect by weight shifting back. How to, go to a distant spot and enthusiastically wait for a reward to come, either with a thrown toy or me walking over with food. All of that stuff I do. I use it for jump training. I use it for weave entries and all this stuff. But that is not the reason to do mark training. That mark training has the capacity to completely transform your relationship with your dog in ways that until you've done it, you can't possibly know what it is. And I personally, if I'm watching trial runs, I'm watching mostly the dog, somewhat the handler, but if somebody comes to me and asks me what happened on the course, I will be able to tell them every single moment their dog had a question on course. I'll be able to say, well, your dog was a little bit stressed, when you were leading into the ring, and at the start line you disconnected and he looked around. I would be noticing all these little mental shifts in the dog, questions like late front cross, but it wouldn't be about the late front cross that I'd notice the dog, collected, that didn't get the information soon enough, or if a bar comes down, I can explain from the dog's perspective why the bar came down. So mark training will help you develop your eye for your dog's mental and emotional state versus just what your dog is doing, behaviorally speaking. And there are some people here who have been in Ocean Foundations for quite a while. And I hope they'll pipe in with some comments about some of the things that they've experienced. But it's one of those things that until you experience it, you'll think, I'm seeing it all. There's nothing else to see. And then you see this whole other thing and you're like, oh my gosh, my dog is doing a little ear twitch there. That means X. And now when that ear twitch happens, or my dog is about to break the start line, I can see the intention that my dog is thinking forward versus present, that it becomes a conscious, it's a knowing instead of a feeling. So, and I'm gonna just go free flowing with this instead of, this is just my style. So this is still related to this, but we all know the feeling of we're leading out and we know our dog is about to break. Now, how do we know that? That if we've spent a lot of time observing our dog, we'll go, oh, I can see them forward. I can see, maybe the jaws are, twitching a little bit. Or, their head is lowered or whatever. That the more we can see, the more that we can actually give our dogs feedback. So if that's happening to my dog at a start line, which is rare that I feel they're not solid, I can kind of say, hey, and I say my word pop, which means shift your mental state up. And my dogs will pop up, and then I know they're solid and I can lead out. So, or let's take, if you have a stop contact. We all know that feeling of our dog is about to release, so we release them before they release. So we're intuitively knowing our dog's gonna release, but Ocean is gonna bring that, mark training, which is the implementation of Ocean, is gonna bring that to a conscious level so that now consciously, my dog's about to break, and you can make a decision that says, do I want to reward my dog for breaking by giving them the release word right when they break, because I know they're going to break anyway, or is that a moment for me to give the feedback that says, I know you're about to break? And I'm going to get into no reward markers later, but I would say whoopsie before my dog even breaks, because I can see their thinking break. And I'm going to talk more about how you know whether your dog understands what you're marking or not, but that's a whole other topic. So let's see. I did go far and wide on that one, but let's see. I want to move into the next. There was a question that somebody had that, let's see, who was it? Diane Egan, that she's writing, confused. I purchased the class for $25. That does not present as being underpriced, as there was precious little meat to it. To be honest, it presented more as a marketing video to sell your idea. I don't mean to be negative or insulting because I get your line of thinking. If I spend money, I expect to learn something, which I did not from watching Mark Training Essentials. And I'm assuming you watched all the way through, because that is a complaint that I got with the mark training class I offered 3 months ago. And that class was just the first chapter. It was mark training, it was principles. And so I added all here's the first things you need to do with mark training. And until your dog is highly mark trained, if I'm going to give you the super advanced stuff, that dog isn't going to be ready for it. So everything was there to do, I'd say the first, I don't know, depending on how motivated you are, 3 months, 6 months of mark training until your dog is at the level of enthusiasm and impulse control that you see in that video. So that doesn't happen overnight. But unlike typical courses, like if I sign up for a course that, I want the fastest teeter ever, which I wouldn't ever sign up for other reasons, but I'm going to pick another one, running dog walk. So that course is going to have this is step 1, this is step 2, 3, 4, 5. There's going to be 10 steps because you're basically training an external behavior. And I did give you those external behaviors in Mark Training Essentials, but that is not the meat. The meat is actually the underlying principles. And this is the hardest thing to convey without offering people the experience. Because what I'm talking about is invisible until it's not. And everybody has, a good eye. They're seeing a lot about their dogs. So I'm not saying you're not seeing what I'm seeing. I'm saying that whatever level you're seeing, applying these type of principles, clarifying and going, okay, my main priority is my dog's mental state, no matter what I'm doing, which is what mark training is great for. It's shifting your perspective. So you're going, okay, number 1, where's my dog at? Where's the subtle shifts? Second, what am I training? So the meat is the invisible stuff. And based on the second half of your question, you seem to understand that. So you went on to say, I also think folks new to dog training would need some guidance for unexpected behaviors that occur. Now that is a very valid point. This is one of the limitations of online training. That I know of somebody who did, I forgot what obstacle it was, but the instructor said, this is step 1, do it 40 times with your dog and then do step 2. Anyway, so this person did step 1 40 times with the dog, and they got stuck at step 1. So she talked to the instructor, and the instructor said, oh, well, with your dog, I would only done it 5 times. 40 times was too much, now your dog thinks that's it. So the problem with these courses is that there is no clear way that you can work with every dog unless you say the underlying principle is observe your dog and respond to the dog in front of you. And these are, yes, the external behaviors you're working on, but what you're really working on is building your dog's enthusiasm and then matching it with impulse control. So that's the meat, and it's just kind of funny meat to sell because it's kind of airy, right? That it doesn't have a concrete, at the end, well, it does have a concrete at the end. At the end, you have a dog that looks like the dog in the video. Those dogs that are driving with enthusiasm and impulse control and teetering on the edge. That doesn't happen by focusing on advanced mark training. So, sending my dog 80 feet to a mark bucket, if they don't have that level of enthusiasm as seen with the dog in the video, you might be able to get them to trot out 80 feet, but that is not the point of mark training. So, okay, so now you're right. It left me feeling as though your knowledge and ideas would be better conveyed via an online class where folks could submit questions and videos for you to review and provide input on. Absolutely, that is Ocean. And I really hesitated to pull mark training out of Ocean to even offer it. So I did it 3 months ago as a test, and I thought, well, can people grasp the underlying principles, or are they going to get locked into this is an external, this is a prop, and this is just one more thing, like I train 2 on 2 off, and I train sit, on a table, and I train down on a mat, and this is front feet on a mark. So it is a limitation of when I'm pulling it out of the context, but I feel like I did share the context. So right, wrong, and otherwise, those are my thoughts upon completion. And I have to say, I welcome all types of feedback, including the negative, and I'm not immune to feeling the sting of negativity, right? Like, why would I seek that out? Well, I seek it out because, I need to know that, this person feels this way. And I'm not going to please everyone. I don't agree, with there's no meat in it. It's just a different kind of course. So, but then she goes on, and this is really nice. She writes, I'll work with my dogs with mark training because I like the idea for my senior dog as a way to let him do small bits of work and get his one-on-one praise, touch, and attention in a very low pressure way. Excellent. That is a fantastic goal with a senior dog with no pressure. You've got the concept there. And I'll work with mark training with my younger terrier who I run in agility as a way to train myself to be more in tune with him, to slow myself down, and to work on both of our abilities to shift between arousal states and to grade our strides as needed on course rather than running the whole thing full out. He is a thinking working type, so I hope to find more balance by adding some mark training into our mix. I'm up for trying anything that provides an opportunity to observe behavior and body language and offers an opportunity to improve our bonding, relationship, and teamwork. I just think more guidance may be needed for some and may be welcome by others. I tend to have trouble observing in the moment, so aside from working hard on pausing and improving my observations, I'll also video so I have a second look to make sure I'm not missing things. Well, this sounds awesome. This sounds exactly like you got the entire point that I was trying to make in this course, that it is not about the external behavior, that you're just using it as a tool to work on these very things. And I agree that getting feedback is a great part, and also just hearing about this in all these different ways that I talk about in Ocean. People who are in that group, they'll attest to that, I come up with different ways of thinking about it so that all of a sudden something will click that hadn't clicked yet. So yeah, I agree. And yet, to make this a $25 course, it can't have, hours and hours of video review and feedback included. That's a different kind of class. And that is kind of what Ocean is. So, but again, mark training is offered as kind of like, hey, check this out. If you like the way I think, if you think this might be an interesting journey to go on with your dog, then Ocean is probably for you. If you feel like, just tell me 1, 2, 3 what I want, what to do with my dog, then you wouldn't be happy with Ocean. And there are plenty of places that will give you really good training ideas for how you get a specific behavior. So Diane's saying, oh, I get that part. And so is there a membership to Ocean? Yeah, there is. And this is not the topic of this Q&A, but I will be talking about it coming up. And it is also very modestly priced. And there are a wide range of prices on courses. There's no real logic to it. I pick low price because what I'm trying to do is sell air in a way, which feels like I'm selling air, but I'm not. But I think the more it catches on, the more people that will get into it, and it'll build some momentum. It'll be more and more people versus trying to make a lot of money off of every person. So. I think I've answered that question, and I really feel like, I appreciate that you shared everything you did, and I hope people besides you benefited from hearing me talk about it. So let's see. That is that. That was a good one. This is this. Okay. I feel like there's one more that I'm missing. Oh, I don't know if it's Yana or Jana. Is it Jana or Yana? I don't know, Jana. I said it both ways. So she's saying, I watched the video, I assume she means the mark training course, and I'm contemplating signing up for the course. Oh, she watched the promo. But while it looks really impressive and fun to teach, I don't fully get the benefits. For example, you're doing jump grids and threadle work with a mark bucket at the end. How is this different than sending a dog to a manners minder or toy? Now, this is such a fantastic question that a dog driving to a manners minder, Yana, thank you, Yana. Okay, so one of my guesses, one of two are right, I guess the only two options really. A A dog driving to a manners minder is different than a dog driving to a toy, because a dog driving to a manners minder is planning on stopping versus a dog driving to a toy is planning on pouncing. And that mental state is going to change what the dog does in the jump grids. And if you've been on the Canine Jumping Forum, you've heard me just express how much appreciation I have for Nina Gregel's take on jump grids. She's a younger Croatian handler. And I saw a dog doing, a promotional video, and I just thought, oh my gosh, what is this? How is she doing this? Where are they coming from? Anyway, so she's broken it down to the basic skills a dog needs, which really 90%, and I'm making up the percentage, 90% of what a dog needs to be a successful jumper is the ability to adjust their strides at top speed so that they take each jump appropriately. And what I love about what Nina does is she's teaching all of that without jumps so that you can do all these reps, all this running. It's fantastically fun for the dogs. They build massive muscle in the rear. They learn how to get really light in the front. And the dogs love it. So how this relates to the reward point is when I audited her online class, all the dogs were driving to a toy. And I didn't really think much about it then because they don't know mark training. But with my dogs, since they do mark training, I started them off running to mark buckets because that's what I do with most of the time when I'm doing jump grids. And I don't want to get too much into that because that's more of a Canine Jumping Forum topic, but we can get into that later in Ocean in another topic here if you want to. But a dog driving to a manners minder's planning on stopping, a dog driving to a mark bucket, all the way from the start of that jump grid is anticipating going to one more obstacle, and that is the mark bucket. And they're anticipating dropping their rear, collecting in a way that is nearly identical to how a dog loads for jumping when it's not a long flat jump, when there's some, loading involved. So what happens is the way the dog takes every jump in a jump grid is the same, and that includes the last jump. If you watch a dog diving for a toy at the end of a jump grid, you see that the form over the last jump is very different. And what concerns me about that is you're training the dog, jumps the same except when it's the last jump, and I want you to jump that one differently. And a lot of dogs will knock the last bar on course, and I think, not a lot of dogs, but you see it. And I think it's possible that the dogs have become so attuned or accustomed to seeing or anticipate seeing this toy that when they're driving towards that last jump, they really don't have anything to aim for because they've always had a toy at the end of these jump grids. So then they don't know where to dive, and they'll often, hit that last bar. Whereas I feel with the mark training that if you handle that last jump just like any other jump, the dog, is accustomed to taking the last jump in anticipation of another obstacle. Whether there is one or not is really irrelevant because you handle like there is. Another great thing, and I'm going back to Nina Gregel's specific striding grids, that I just worked 2 classes that teaching an introduction to. It's a slightly modified thing from what Nina does, and I assume when she works with people in person versus her online class, she modifies things too. It's like the limit of an online class is, you set something up and then the person sends you a video and then you change it, versus if you were there, you'd be changing it in 2 seconds. So anyway, I set this thing up, and I thought the reason none of these dogs are having any trouble, they're not skipping over, missing gaps in the, they're not taking 2 bars at once, and they're not knocking bars, and they're not doing all the things that happened in the auditors when I was seeing in her auditing class, is because they're thinking differently. And the way I know that is in the second class, one dog was not driving well to a mark bucket, and so we used the toy instead, and that dog did all the things the dogs did in Nina's class. It skipped bars, it went around jumps, it banged into jumps, it did all those things. So it confirms the feeling I have, that in the thinking I have based on observations, that a dog driving to a mark bucket who has been highly mark trained, so it's rewarding. They're like, get me on that mark, and I'm, yeah, that's as good as a toy. that is a different mindset than a dog driving towards a reward. So, but a dog has to drive to the mark with joy and enthusiasm. And how that happens is through these ocean principles again. So the first thing you're doing, instead of doing all this advanced mark training, you're doing it on a single bucket. You are marking the shift in your dog's mental state. You know, that you are being really precise with your handling. Like mark training allows you to get really clear about your mechanics. So, you know, you're gonna mark the second that second foot hits the mark bucket. That clarity is gonna make a dog go on even faster because now they know exactly what they're being rewarded for, versus if sometimes you mark 1 foot on and then, you know, then the dog, a border collie, might only put 1 foot on, or if the both feet go on and then you're kind of laid and then the dog might step off because they're really not sure what they were rewarded for because they were already stepping off when you said good dog. So this simple action is going to help you get really, really crisp and clear because the action is so simple and that's the only thing going on, that mark that second foot. Then you're also going to be able to see what your dog thinks about the word that you use to mark. So this is something I noticed in the live instructor training, that dogs thought the marker word was food is coming. And how do we know that? Well, first, as soon as they said the word, the dog looked at their hand, one sign. The other thing is the handler couldn't get away from the dog, because when they said the marker word from even 2 feet away, the dog heard the word and came off the mark. So it clarified a little glitch in the whole training, the behavioral chain you're trying to build. And one of the great things about mark training and the pause that it creates, that, you know, P-A-U-S-E, that it creates in the dog, is it does give you time to build praise and connection into your dog's reward chain so that it's second only to the external reward. And I did talk about this, but it is such a key point, and it is a problem area in the way people reward their dogs. If your dog does something great and you throw the toy without inserting any kind of praise that means, yeah, that's it, I loved it. If that doesn't happen before the toy, you're building value for the toy, but you're not building value for connecting with you. So going back to the mark training, once people realize they say the word, that dog now thinks that the food is coming, you realize you've missed an opportunity to build one more little thing into that reward chain. And I don't even know if that's a term, reward chain, but I like it. That you're saying, okay, dog goes to the mark bucket. Dog gets praise. Tail starts wagging. Praise starts going higher and higher. Then comes the word that means, and now the toy or the food is coming. So the dog has no reason to look at your hands, step off the mark until your ears are peeled, waiting to hear for that magical word that says, now an external reward is coming. So the way behavioral chains work, the external reward is the icing on the cake. But now think about the cake. You've created a layered cake versus just a cupcake. So you've got praise being second only to food or a toy. And you've got front feet on a mark bucket as third in line for the third most valuable thing that you've created in your behavioral chain. So now you send your dog down a line of jumps, they're driving for this mark. That feels great because they know what's coming next. Ears are peeled, here comes the praise, here comes the word, not here comes the toy, here comes the word. What happens as a result of that? Dog connects to the handler, handler connects to the dog. It gives you an opportunity to build connection into the reward chain. Then the finale is you throw the toy to the ball on the mark, which for me, my dogs, and I recommend it, is that means you are now free to leave the mark when I say get it, and I throw the toy. After I say get it, the dog can leave the mark. Or I walk over the whole way like, yeah, what a great dog, and I bring him the food. And I recently came up with this really fun, I think it's called an analogy, or yeah, it's an analogy. That there's studies that have been done that show that when people go to a restaurant, this anticipation starts building. So you show up at the restaurant, you already know from your past experiences that good things happen. It's like a dog showing up at an agility trial, right? They're like, oh my God, we're here, right? Excitement's starting to build. So you get seated, you get your menu, and you know what's coming next. And that is that the waiter's gonna come and take your drink order. And so you're already like thinking, oh, I want a glass of red wine. So now you start looking around, right? Like the dog would at a trial, and you see a waiter walking over to your table, and you're like, your internal tail is wagging that the waiter's coming. You order your glass of wine, everybody at the table orders their glass of wine or whatever, and at that point, studies have shown that people start acting jovial when they've ordered their drinks. It's not when the wine comes, it's not when the wine is ingested, that the dopamine, the chemical bath that's provided from alcohol actually starts when you order your wine. Is that like astonishing? So we're mammals. Our dogs are mammals. Mark training and the pause and the intentional building of a behavioral chain that involves you as the handler, like the waiter, you are creating that same chemical bath about front feet on the mark, like being at the table is already anticipatory, like, wow, I know things happen when I'm at this table, like here's the menu. And then they hear, the words, they see you walking over, they see you're about to throw a toy, they have the anticipation, like, yeah, here, I'm about to place my order. And at that point, you don't actually even need to give them the icing on the cake anymore. It's actually just the praise that does it, just like ordering the wine. So that's how you fade the external rewards, is that you are building so much value by consistently adding these two elements, front feet on a mark, praise, connection, that once your dog is driving with joy and enthusiasm to a mark and is staying there, meaning your dog knows that these words that you're saying don't mean you release from the mark, now you can just release your dog from the mark to another mark or release them to another jump or whatever as the reward. So something I've seen a lot of, and that, there's people can use toys really well where the dog is not it's not obsessing about the toy. The dog is really connected with the handler waiting for the toy. And I think it's a mistake that a lot of mid-level trainers can make that the top trainers don't make. And it's a hard distinction maybe to see unless you know the difference. But the way you'll know if your dog is valuing you as the bringer of the toy and the player with the toy, or if the dog is valuing just the toy, is if your dog runs faster when your dog knows you have a toy, then you're building value for the toy. If your dog runs the same whether you have the toy on you, whether it's visible or not, then you are building value for yourself and using the toy as a reward. So really important point, and I don't recommend using toys with mark training until you really have thought it through and really understand how to insert yourself as a waiter taking a drink order into your dog's reward chain. So, but again, like to me, that analogy, that's worth 25 bucks. When I came up with it, I thought that's really valuable. It's like, I love that. So the other thing I just had a mind-blowing insight about was no reward markers this week. And one of the great things about teaching, and I resisted teaching for years. When I was doing big distance in NADEC with a little teeny terrier, and I've done a lot of training. I love dog training, and I've studied with great people. I've read all these books and really understand, all the mechanical stuff. But I didn't teach because, first, I'm an introvert. You wouldn't guess it, but I can do this. But really, what I'd rather do is, be by myself with my dogs, which I guess COVID has that advantage for introverts. But where was I? About the no reward markers. So as a result of teaching with people, I'm able to observe all these dogs. And so I know that there's studies that show no reward markers are not as good as just ignoring mistakes when training. And so I'm watching a really highly skilled trainer working with a well-trained dog who is mark trained. And we're doing this setup that I don't know that it made it into this mark training course. It might have come right after. This fantastic way of proofing a start line with a mark trained dog. Anyway, that's a side point. But and the dog wasn't getting it. So the dog would make the mistake, and the person would wait them out, and the dog wouldn't get it, and then she'd, oh, let's try again, and the dog, and all that. And I just thought, gosh, I know this is the better way to do it than the way I do it, which is, as soon as my dog is thinking that mistake, and this is a setup, so you're looking for the thinking. It's a setup that makes the dog move a front foot so that you can then, say the whoopsie word to clarify sit means sit. And the dog's not in a mark bucket when they're doing this, but let me stay on point here. So I had to chew on that for weeks going, why is that not working better? Because that's the better way to do it. And then I realized that by training, I started training this new precision behavior. So it was a very basic thing where I was using like a mouth clicker, which I like to do the mouth click word when I'm really getting specific, mouth clicker, and like kind of thing instead of words. It helps my brain be really crisp. And I realized that I don't use no reward marker words until I know my dog knows the correct behavior. And it's in the way I know my dog knows the correct behavior is in the rare occasion that a mistake is made and I will mark it with my neutral whoops, that the dog doesn't make the same mistake again. There's no negativity about it. It just, we're done. And the only other time I use a no reward marker is if, there's this looping thing happen where it's like, the dog is doing the same thing 3 times in a row. I want to stop the behavior. I will give him a whoopsie on that. Like, I was doing a healing thing where Dakota had been popping his nose against my hand as a way to get him into perfect heel position. I wanted to fade that into, I want you to be here, but I want you to not touch my hand anymore. And so all it took with that was, he kept doing it because that's the way he was trained to be in the position. And just an occasional whoopsie got him to, stop doing it. So in that case, multiple repetitions of the thing I don't want, one clarifying whoopsie, and he went, oh, what about this? And then he just tried, he almost touched his nose, and he didn't. I'm like, good boy. And I saw the light bulb. He went, oh, we're not supposed to touch the nose anymore. So those are the ways I use no reward markers. Here's a way I've seen people who are good trainers use them in mark training, and they aren't really no reward markers. They may be using a word that's commonly used as a no reward marker, but observe your dog and you will see whether they are no reward marker words or whether they are cues. So this is the situation. A dog is doing a demo of mark training. The dog is sent to a mark, jumps on, good dog, jumps off, whoops, dog jumps back on, good dog, dog jumps back off, whoops, dog jumps back on. Send to another bark, same thing. In my experience, it looks to me like whoops means go on the mark, and mark means go on the mark and step off, and you're going to get your next cue, which means whoops and go back on. So it may look like non-reward marker, or no reward marker, but it's actually not. That dog thinks mark means hit the mark and leave, and whoops means go back on the mark. So it's like a complex behavioral chain that person has created unintentionally. So here's what I think was going on with that highly skilled trainer, why it wasn't working to wait out the dog. And this is the insight that kind of blows me away. So the dog makes the mistake, and in this case, the dog is sitting in front of the mark bucket, and based on we're setting him up to make this mistake. This is the whole point. And in this context, it's a happy mistake. We're not setting him up, to be all bummery. So anyway, so the dog in my scenario, let me describe it. So my dog is sitting in front of a mark. I lead out. The dog has been so accustomed to sitting on the mark in this exact setup because we've just done mark, 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 mark onto these 3 marks back and forth, back and forth. I'm setting him up to fail. As soon as my dog starts reaching 1 foot forward to step on the mark, I say whoops. And the dog goes, what about that was whoops? And by that point, they're on the mark, and I set them up again. And with both my dogs, the second time, as soon as they move their foot before it hits the mark, I'm like, whoops. And they go on the mark, and they're like, huh. And the third time, They just stayed there. And I saw the light bulb and they went, oh, don't move my feet. And they got it. And at future sessions, they completely got it. And the reason I did it with my older dog is I needed to get her start line really good for a 60-foot lead out past 2 tunnels. And once I did this near my setup at a trial, I knew she'd be rock solid because that was so much harder. Okay, so back to the person who doesn't use no reward markers. So her dog is sitting there, steps onto the mark, gets no word that means anything is wrong. Dog is staring at the handler, handler is staring at the dog. Now what happens? Handler wants the dog to do something, right? Because now nothing's happening. So the handler then gives some sort of cue. And the cue could be as simple as, like, I've been watching Lucifer because I've been watching all the series I've never watched. So they might give a little bit of a devil face, like that kind of thing. So they're giving a cue to try to get the dog to not just stare at them. Or they might start leaning forward a little bit. And the handler may not even be aware that she's doing this. Because what you don't want to say a no reward marker because you know it's better not to. But now you're stuck in nothing land. So then you have to, okay, you got to cue the dog. Okay, let's try again. So whatever that is, I'm not sure what you'd classify that. Let's try again. Sounds a bit like a no reward marker, but whatever. So you set the dog up again. The dog steps forward onto the mark, gets no feedback. So how are you going to communicate to the dog that it's not about the mark? And that was the baffling part of it. And without giving him feedback. And so here's the insight that I hope it sounds as interesting to you as it did to me, that if you are tuned in with yourself, you may not be giving a no reward marker when you think you're not. Like, and I mean tuned in to the point where you are present, you know this is a test, you have no desire to have your dog be successful or not successful. If your dog breaks, you really don't care. A completely neutral presence. And that's rare because usually you have an agenda. Like, you want your dog to be successful, especially if they've just been unsuccessful 3 times in a row. So then you just check in and you go, oh, I am willing. I'm doing like a Spock mind meld. I'm trying to will my dog to get back. And that manifests as barely perceptible, but perceptible to your dog, cues with your body language and your energy in terms of leaning, in terms of vibing with your face, in terms of shoulders changing, slight, left and right thing. So it's not black and white about these no reward markers. And I agree that there's no place for them early on in training until a dog knows what the correct behavior is and rarely makes a mistake. Then I do agree that it's not fair to say, no, that's not it, or even neutral, no, that's not it, because then you're cueing what it is. And and since this was such a baffling topic to me for so long, I went back and I read the study, and I think it was the main study that this conclusion was based on. 27 dogs in a laboratory setting. The dogs were handled by people, not their owners. The positive word was a click. The negative word was a beep. And again, these are dogs that are not working with their handlers. So basically what they did is they took the social component out of training and they tried to come up with 2 neutral things. Well, I know one thing for sure, a beep is not neutral to my border collie. If something beeps, he leaves the room. So if any of these dogs don't like beeping, that was a negative reinforcer, not neutral. And the clicker is not neutral either. That I do a lot of freestyle training, and I had the good fortune of taking private lessons with Michelle Poulet many years ago with my 2 terriers. And previous to that lesson, just by about a week, my dogs had gone from barking when they were doing kind of really hard stuff like double weaving. I did a lot of brace work, weaving backwards through my legs. There'd be some barking like trucks backing up, beeping, that kind of barking like woof, woof, woof. But all of a sudden they started barking like crazy. And I couldn't figure it out. And so, I'm asking her, what are you seeing here? Why are they barking? Why are they barking? So we're talking. And through the lesson, I went, oh gosh, I switched from a button clicker to a box clicker. Do you think it's that? And I said, because I've been training running contacts, so I switched to a box clicker so, Lil can hear it better. And I created clicker boards that had box clickers in them too. So Michelle went, well, get a button clicker. So I borrowed somebody's button clicker. The barking stopped. So that's an indication that the sound of the click is not neutral, that the box clicker, the sharpness of it, was creating a high arousal level with my dogs. And I don't know if that high arousal level was based on their association with agility training, or if just that sharpness of the clicker creates an emotional state that is not neutral. And so I looked at that whole study and went, well, this big conclusion has been made out, and people are taking that literally. But if you observe your dog, you will know to what degree that is true in the context of your training. So in the context of that lab, yes, that is what's true. But in the context of a more complex behavior, where you're trying to communicate what exactly the mistake is, and if there's many things that are happening, if your dog is just not getting any information, that the study may not be as relevant. And I think a lot of people like me, we got really into understanding the behavioral sciences, understanding training mechanics and all that stuff, and that's phenomenal. And I think that trend has been going on for 10 years in agility, is really understanding what we're doing. But I think now, for people who have a basic level understanding, that it's time to take it to this next level, which is to really utilize that social component between dogs and people. I mean, these are the dogs that were the ones that were willing to come to the campfire and were able to read human emotions, to know which people are going to throw the food and which people are going to kick them with, it wouldn't be a boot back then, but whatever they'd have on their feet, kick them with a foot. So there's all of this communication that's happening. And by trying to be completely blank, we're missing out on the most rewarding aspects, I think, to dogs, and that is to engage with us in a meaningful way. So that long story, I hope it made you think too about some of the ways that you're using training. Like, you might be going, well, this is the way you do it because this is the way it's always been done. But once you start prioritizing observing your dog and connecting to the dog in front of you, thus making subtle changes to what you're doing in the dog in front of you, and then observing your dog as an experiment, I think it's going to start expanding you more into the gray area and out of this black and white, this is good training, this is bad training. Because something I also noticed in this in-person training is people with really high arousal dogs, they tended to go real calm. And the way it looked to me is they were like walking down a dark alley, and they know there's a restaurant. I guess they have restaurants on the mind. Like, there's a restaurant with beautiful yellow lights, and there's going to be a waiter, it's going to give you a glass of wine at the end of the alley. But you're walking down a dark alley, and you can't really see what's going around. So you're going to be kind of high alert. You're going to be attentive. You're going to be quiet with your steps so that you are aware of your surroundings entirely, ready to take action. Well, that's what people look like when they're working with these really high dogs that look like they could explode any second. So then what I notice is then the dog starts going into that same timid, kind of in their head, they're tense, like everybody's holding their breath. And so the few dogs that did that, I suggested to the handler, you're in the safety of this room, all the dogs are in the crates, take a deep breath, walk with confidence between these mark buckets, use the voice you use with your dog at home, and as soon as the handler shifted, the dog shifted, and the tail started wagging, the dogs picked up their energy, everything just instantaneously changed. So that's an indication that dogs are reading our emotional states. And we all know that, right? We're depressed, we're sick, our dogs are laying in bed with us. We're excitable, they're excitable. I mean, we all know that, but it's funny how unless you are prioritizing this mental and emotional state of your dog and yourself, you're missing out on the biggest gift of dog training, that using this social connection you have with your dog and that they're, wanting to have with you. So going back to that whole reward chain, that mark training gives you that pause where you're inserting connection. So now your dog's running to a mark and then looking, for the connection with the waiter, looking to make eye contact wherever you are. It's a positive, it's a reinforced thing. It is a positive, way to reward your dog. And it comes naturally to the dogs. So the other big insight I had this week is I've been listening to a lot of Warwick Schiller's stuff, and I subscribe to his membership even though I don't have a horse. He's a horse person he was recommended to me by a good friend. We go way back to, we had horses, and she was the wise elder. She was a year older than me, and we had horses and our pastures next to each other, and we'd go horseback riding and stuff. She says, oh, he's doing for horses what you're doing with Ocean. I thought, okay, let me see. And he really is. There are some differences between horses and dogs, but there are more things in common than different. And the reason I've been really blown away by spending time watching him train people, training horses, is I thought about, if dogs were 2,000 pounds, would we be doing what we're doing with our dogs? So would you be taking a dog for a walk that is reactive? Or would you let that dog pull you down the front stairs to the door? If it were a horse, no, because it could hurt you. Would you be taking a dog for an off-leash hike if there was a 2,000-pound animal that might go charging away and maybe run into a person, or get startled by a bike and rear up and, hurt himself or whatever? And it just got me thinking about how easy it is to push our dogs around to get our way. And here's an example of just this personal example. I mean, because I am in Ocean, deeper probably than anybody, and that's why I developed it, is going, hey, take the plunge, it's crazy wild in here. So I'm always going deeper with my dogs. And with my border collie, early on he became crazy about his feet, where toenails became classic desensitization, where it takes a half hour, and I do the, he puts his nail near the thing, and we do this thing, we get through it. And I just think, well, this is just going to be life with him. But recently he's had to have some orthopedic evaluations. And even while sedated, the vet said he is putting up such a struggle, it's hard to get him on his side. And I thought, whoa. And then I think, oh, this is insurmountable. Oh, this is part of him being crazy about being handled. He's never liked his tail touched, and I've worked on that. He's never liked his butt touched. And I was feeling like I can't do this. I can't do it, because I couldn't make him do it like a horse. And then I decided, well, I'm going to watch some Warwick Schiller videos, and they're not about this, about anything. And just to get myself in the right headspace of, if this were a 2,000-pound horse, how would I get this animal to let me do passive range of motion with his rear legs? So I developed this very simple technique, and within 5 minutes I had him offering to lay down on his side. And that's when I realized he has no sensitivity about his rear feet and his rear legs being manipulated. The sensitivity was about being pushed over on his side, which probably emerged from being manhandled at a vet, like for x-rays, out of my sight. Probably happened when he was 1, when he had bad sprain. This isn't a blamey thing. It just, makes sense of why, he's more difficult on one side than the other. But my point is that once I stopped trying to make him do it, because we can make our dogs do stuff, and I used basic training principles, I was able to cooperate or collaborate with him. And it was remarkable. And I just want to describe what I did. That, I put my hand on his shoulder, and I put some pressure, and I released the pressure a little bit. So my hand kept holding the shoulder, I pushed it on, release it a little bit, and I gave him a piece of kibble. So push the pressure, release the pressure, give him a piece of kibble. On maybe the 3rd or 5th try, I pushed the pressure, and ever so slightly he released a little bit of pressure. We are talking like not infantile, that's what I am sometimes, tiny, we'll just switch words entirely, tiny bit. And I just reward good dog, and I gave him a piece of kibble, and that's all it took for him to realize that it's the release of the pressure that is being rewarded with praise, and that's followed by the kibble. And before I knew it, he was flopping down on that side. And I've been working both sides and going different places in the house, and each time, you know, we have to go through a little bit of prep, but once he realized that he was in control and that yes, he can do it, you know, we worked through something that seemed insurmountable. So really the challenge I have for everybody is, and this is part of Ocean, you're going to get a free little thing here, that it starts with explore. And really observing your dog in day-to-day life and looking at places where any behaviors are you know, churning, rippling below the surface of your dog. And it could be, you know, your issue could be loose leash walking. The way you've been dealing with it is you got a no pull halter. You know, whatever your issue is, you know, pulling you to the start line, you know, is look at these things that your dog is doing and envision if this were a 2,000-pound horse, how would you get infinitesimal? Okay, yeah, see, that's why I should be in my studio by myself. I'm not a good words person. Thank you, Chris, for that. So, but to really, it's a great way to think about it, right? That if I couldn't make my dog do this, how would I train it? And you'll do it by applying Ocean principles. So mark training is one way to become a better dog trainer, but you can do it through anything. Like in my jump grid class, that it became an Ocean class where if they didn't have a nice crisp way to get their dogs set up at the start line, I was able to point out, do you see how that's causing a little stress and conflict between you and your dog at the start line? Do you see how a jump grid is giving you an opportunity to work on 20 start lines in one session? And what do you want to work on here? Do you want to work on, you know, getting to the jump grid and having this conflict and this fight and this difficulty getting your dog lined up? Or do you want to actually work on, before your next turn, a really simple way that you can get your dog to line up without stress? So that's kind of the horsey mentality. So anything can be a way to apply the Ocean principles: observe your dog, connect with compassion, engagement with joy, attitude before anything, and never stop learning about your dog and yourself. But mark training is just one simple way with a whole bunch of added benefits for training. So, you know, I had wanted to share a bunch of, you know, testimonials from people who I've worked with, and I'm just going to share one and then see if anything came up in the comments, because this is from a friend of mine, Annette Thomason, who she is like a really high level agility person with brilliant dog savvy, and we both train at Marin Humane. And I just want to read this because we've done 2 sessions together, and she also, you know, during these sessions, I mean, she's taken the Mark Training Essentials course, so now she, you know, has gotten more of the background on it. So she writes, Moxie, which is, well, she's describing her, is a very high drive border collie puppy, was diagnosed and underwent surgery for OCD at 7 months. That's a shoulder thing that's more common than one would think. This meant that during the next 5 months of recovery, there was no agility and no toy play. Moxie is pretty obsessed with any toys and loves to retrieve and tug. When we returned to our foundation training in November, I found myself with a 1-year-old who couldn't think straight in the presence of toys because she was too aroused and too handler toy focused. This led to a lot of spinning, bar knocking, super low bars, barking, and frustration on both of our parts. After about a month, I realized that neither of us were enjoying training, and I knew I needed to find a better way to interact with Moxie. I work with Deb at Marin Humane and reached out to her because I know various aspects of her Ocean program focus on the mental state of the dog, and that's what I needed help with. I can train behaviors, but I did not have the tools to deal with this over-the-top arousal. I needed to find that epic balance and learn how to work with the dog in front of me. Dev and I met a couple of times in the past month and worked on mark training with no toy in sight. I've done some perch work and sending to a mark bucket in the past, so Moxie was familiar with the behavior. Within a short amount of time, Dev helped me see the tiny signs that Moxie was learning that it's okay to relax a little bit on the mark bucket and everything doesn't have to be at 110% arousal. So that's an example of that exact thing that I was working on with Dakota about, a slight relaxation, right? Releasing pressure with slight relaxation. Once he realized that he was getting rewarded for that, he offered more and more of it. Back to Annette. Now I look to her tail, her ears, and even her eyes tell me about her mental state. I scratch her chest or chin and give her lots of verbal praise. She's still 100% ready to do the next thing, but she has a calming place to wait and hear about how awesome she is. That's that connection thing. And Moxie, I never saw the crazy dog. All I saw was this amazing high drive dog that was deeply connected with Annette. So yeah, this is a beautiful thing to see. I've been playing agility for over 20 years and therefore have a long history of training my own dogs, but I've never really focused on my dog's emotional state like I am now. The mark bucket is Moxie's anchor, and I talked about that in the class, that it does become an emotional anchor due to this association with that pause and like the exhale, the emotional exhale that comes with that, and probably physical exhale. It's her safe place where she doesn't have to do anything except hang out with her feet on a mark bucket and listen how amazing she is. It's been less than a month and I'm in love with training my dog again. Like, how huge is that? Yay, yeah. Anyway, I like to warm her up by putting a mark bucket in a line or square, multiple mark buckets I think she means, and just working from one to the other in a random fashion. I've also used a line of mark buckets to help train rear crosses. This is still a work in progress, but we're getting there. Yeah, Annette and I, we have an ongoing thing about, she hates front rear crosses, I love them, and I'm gonna transform her into somebody who loves rear crosses too. I also use the mark bucket in our jump grid and short sequence training. The mark bucket at the beginning is helping her with her start line state behavior, and the last one gives her something to focus on ahead of me. And once she finishes on the mark bucket, it gives her those moments to take a breath and bring that arousal down a couple of notches as I approach her with praise and pets and then maybe a treat. So, and that just brings up this point about we're back chaining a mental state, right? That's why you want it, you're building value for toys and food, because that's the mental state that you're trying to back chain into these other behaviors. So what the mark training does is it builds enthusiasm with thoughtfulness versus building crazy running, even through bars, whatever, that it combines enthusiasm with thoughtfulness. I've tested the waters by bringing out a toy, and while she is better, we have a long way to go on that front. And since praise and touch are rewarding for her, I don't think I need to be in a hurry to incorporate a toy. Brilliant. By paying attention to Moxie's emotional state, I'm now training the whole dog and not just the external behaviors, which makes our training sessions fun and productive with little to no frustration on either of our parts. If there was a magic pill to help us with our issues, mark training is it. Thank you, Deb, for sharing your time and expertise with me. Annette. So Annette has been the perfect person to work with, completely open-minded, and as soon as I pointed out the very first things about, did you notice the ear twitch? Did you notice the head bob? Did you notice this? So at the beginning of the first session, she's like, no, I didn't notice any of that. But by the start of the second session, because I videotaped and gave her the videotape, by the start of the second session, she was seeing all of it. And now that she's seeing it, she will never not see it, because all this stuff in our visual, our sensory experiences, our brain is taking in every bit of raw data. The stuff that makes it to consciousness are the elements that our brain thinks are relevant. So once something becomes relevant, which is the ear twitch, the head bob, the lean forward, the shift back, all of that stuff, once we know that's important, our brain is going to naturally say, hey, that just happened, versus it just becoming the blur of the raw data. I went there. My artwork deals with perception and how the brains focus on certain things and stuff like that. But, and going back to the very beginning of this, that you don't know what you're not seeing until you see it, and then you will never unsee it. And mark training is a great way to see more, and the amount you can see really is endless. I mean, given what I'm learning, and I've been working on this for 6 years, it's, the growth that I'm seeing in my own ability to see and to explain what's happening is just, it's like COVID, it's exponential. Not that exponential, but it's growing. So anyway, I'm going to scroll through comments and see if there's any questions. But please, for people who have already signed up for these courses, for the Mark Training Essentials course on Clean Run, please ask questions, and you can post some short videos in this free Ocean for Dogs group. Definitely that, I'm happy to give you feedback, to the extent that I have time. And if this really appeals to you, I definitely recommend going to the oceanfordogs.com. That's the website where my classes exist, and get yourself on the wait list for Ocean. And basically that means you're on the email list, where I will then send the email and say, registration is opening on this date, it's closing on this date. Because just like the Mark Training course, this has a finite amount of time. And the other thing about Ocean it's different than Mark Training, because there's an interactive component, is it starts on a certain date and people will go through it together. So there'll be weekly Q&As and opportunities to share videos and discuss whatever's going on with you and your dog. But yeah, there's no no commitment you're making by just signing up for that wait list. But make sure that when you sign up for it, that make sure that you take that email, if it ends up in your spam, and whitelist that email address, like put it in your contact list, because I've had problems with people in Ocean Foundations where all of a sudden my emails are going to spam. So there's some nuances about technology that are not good. Let's see. So Yana's saying, what if you have the opposite problem to high arousal? One of mine very easily goes flat and then to slug mode, especially, let's see, especially Seymour, if he thinks he got it wrong. Yeah. So I've only talked about the high dogs, but Mark Training brings dogs out of their shell. So these dogs that have very little confidence, and they lack resilience, they lack the mental toughness, that if you start verbally marking with praise, that your dog gets on the second mark, you're smiling, that second foot, good dog, and you give him a treat, eventually the dog's gonna go, oh, I'm gonna put my second foot on there, and you're gonna say, good dog, and then the tail's gonna start opening up. Or the dog goes, second foot on the mark, and I don't love throwing food, but a dog that's very, very low and I want them moving, I would tend to recall them to me for movement. But if you throw food, you can throw food, let the dog, move a little bit between. That Mark Training has a way of bringing the low dogs up in the same way as it has bringing the high dogs down. So just like with a high dog, you don't want to try to get them to be calm. And if you think about, if you are super excited, you just, I don't know, won a big race, a road race or whatever, and somebody was trying to calm you down, you'd be like, ugh, don't calm me down, join me in my excitement. So just like you don't want to try to calm down a highly aroused dog, you actually want to connect them, and that's what Mark Training does. And you want to exude confidence and bring them more into a grounded state. The same is true for these low arousal dogs, that you are able to bring them up through that pause on the mark, that again, that anticipation that the wine is coming starts building anticipation, and that's when the chemical bath starts happening, that starts expressing itself with a little bit of happiness. So with dogs like that, you're actually shaping happiness. And the simplicity of the mark bucket and starting, and I talked about this a lot in the course because it's really great for these low dogs as well as the high dogs, is starting with a known behavior, something what I call the 1 + 1 = 2 behavior, that a dog that feels insecure is going to look around and it's going to see a mark bucket, it's going to run to that mark bucket and stand on and go, look at me, I'm on my mark. You give them a reward. Now you do the thing that's a little bit harder, whatever, I'm going to pick weave poles, open channel, whatever. dog does it, feels a little bit like, oh my God, oh, that was a little bit weird. I'm not sure about that. Runs to another mark, goes, oh, there's a mark. 1 + 1 = 2. So now what you've done is you've just chained together confident, I understand this is easy. Now learning, right? Learning has some stress involved. So now I'm ooh, this is a little scary. Learning, pressure, and stress is part of learning. Then, whew, I'm back on a mark. So it is fantastic for dogs like that. I have seen dogs come out of their shell like crazy. And the other thing that I would do with dogs that are on the low side is encourage motion. That a lot of these dogs are kind of locked in their heads and they're very suppressed. And so I would be shaping meaning verbally marking anything that's a little bit expressive. And I don't even care, positive, whatever. I'm just looking for some kind of physical expression that is energetic, right? Any kind of movement is a dog expressing energy. But if you were working with marks and you weren't finding that your dog was coming up, then I would say post a video of what's going on and I'll give you the feedback, because this works really great in both directions. And there was a dog at my second mark training in my grid workshop that is a dog I know, and he can run fast and he can run slow. And as soon as this handler crispened up her mechanics, the dog went from like, I put one foot on, I put the other foot on, I'm gonna look around a little bit. Once she got really crisp, the dog went boom, boom, mark, and went, and he's with her right there. Everything became really precise. So what she had inadvertently done with this dog is made it all about the toy, where the dog is just, give me the toy, doesn't want to do anything but get the toy. So we remove the toy from the equation, mark that second foot, and just by marking the moment, the dog already got punchier. Good dog, right? So what are we doing? We're marking the external behavior, but we're also marking the internal shift in the dog's mind. He went, I know what I need to do, and I'm going to do it. And you're saying, yes, you did it. Second foot, awesome dog. So then she's saying the awesome dog, and now I say, you say the word, whatever you say, get it. That means the toy's coming, and now you reach back and you throw the toy. So that dog knows that we're doing this whole thing before the toy comes. And you think, well, that would bum the dog out. He has to wait for the toy. Well, no, quite the opposite happened. It became the dog on the mark bucket at the table, waiting to place a drink order and getting the drink. It became that same anticipation. So this handler just had never really thought through the reward chain to build value for the anticipation part of it. So it is as good for the low dogs. It is good. I have not met a dog that mark training didn't provide positive mental, emotional benefits for. And I've heard just at the in-person workshop, I think this is the smartest way I've ever heard of somebody using mark training. She has this giant dog, and he gets really nervous at the vet, and they've had to, they have to muzzle him, and it's traumatic, and so she just starts sending the dog in with a mark bucket, and the dog stands on the mark, allows himself to be examined, stays completely chill, no problem. Like, is that genius or what? I think Virginia is the one that came up with that great thing. And I know, a person in Ocean Foundations, this is the ongoing membership. You take the foundations course, and then most people, like 90% of people, continue on with the monthly membership because of all the different ways you can take Ocean. But that she was saying that all her dogs would go ballistic every time a fox or a squirrel or a deer would show up in her mountain home. And she just started putting mark buckets out, and as soon as one dog would bark, she'd send them to their mark buckets, and they all would be quiet. And now when the dogs see wildlife, instead of barking, they actually go to their mark buckets, and one of the dogs doesn't even go to the mark bucket. He puts his feet up on this raised surface and stares at the wildlife, but is quiet. That's pretty brilliant. I think that's freaking amazing. So for anybody, if you have a dog that is barking like crazy, you may want to try a mark bucket on that. But again, just somebody figured out a cool way of using mark training, and she's been doing it seriously for probably 4 or 5 months. I mean, I've been telling her about it for 6 years, and she didn't get it till she got it, but she got it now, so I'm pretty excited about that. So let's see. I hope that answered your question, Yana. But it is great because slug mode is repression. And it could be confusion, it could be insecurity. But mark training is a great way to build resilience because dogs can make mistakes and they can go on the mark and just go, okay, that was a mistake, but oh, I'm in my happy place. So they're great. So Diane is writing, thanks for the great discussion. Need to get to the dogs. Ah, that's what I needed, was where to get the sign up for all of that. Okay, I don't know if you're talking about Ocean or Clean Run is where the Mark Training Essentials course is. And they have a really nice format. It's very, very easy to go through. I recommend it highly. Oh, hi, Sherry and Glenn. Cool. So there you have it, an introvert talking like an extrovert for an hour and a half. And now I'm going to go flop down on the sofa and recover for like 2 hours. Oh, great. Okay. Thanks, Yana, for that. So I will give you guys, I don't know, a few more minutes. Feel free to leave if you don't have a question. Let's see. Okay, Diane. Yeah, yes, talking about Ocean. Yeah. I mean, you were talking about Ocean in your post. You were describing exactly what Ocean is. But again, it is, well, I guess I shouldn't be calling it air, it's water. It's a place that behaviors exist, but it's not about the external behaviors. But I think I have made myself super clear about that. And, I had pages and pages of notes. If I feel like I missed something that I really wanted to say that I didn't get to, I may post another really short live-style video like this in Ocean for dogs in the coming days. Or if you have a question that didn't get answered, that I didn't see it, please ask it and I will answer it. Because Ocean, let's see, the Mark Training Essentials is available through January 25th. So I definitely think it's a great introduction to this way of thinking, and you could certainly, it is a standalone. It is enough in and of itself, especially once you've now heard, how to apply, I think. So anyway, cool, everyone. So have a great evening or whatever time zone it is for you. And hope to see you here in Ocean for Dogs and possibly some of you in the next Ocean Foundations, which is going to start sometime in February. I have to just work out some there's always technical stuff to work out. So, and thank you, Brittany, for thanking me. And okay, I think I'm going to be quiet and just let the comments fly for a few more minutes. Oh, thanks, Diane. Okay. I think we're good. Okay. See you guys soon. Bye. Why isn't it ending? If you end this video now, you'll be able to choose if you want to save or delete it. Okay, so if you end it now, you will be able to choose.